Hello, my name is Nephi Wolf and I'm with NCSI. Today's video we're going to be reviewing the types of widgets in Xtraction. We'll be looking at the different settings for them. Each kind of widget, grouping, time widgets, list widgets, each one has different settings and there's lots of different ways to display them, and we will be going over that in this video, so it will be a little bit longer than some of the previous ones. But you should note that on the bottom we will have the video broken up into sections so you can skip ahead or skip back to find more information on the type of widget that you would like to learn about. The first set of widgets that we will look at today are the time components. So as we design a new dashboard, we can just do new and we choose the different types of, how many options we want in there, how many panes, and then we can come over here and we can use these time components and we can drag them over. You can just drag them over there and then you get a report like that. You can have bars, and so we're going to look at these in more detail to start off with. And so here, some time examples. So for the time components, we have an area layout, and so here you can see the area layout as it goes up and down. It covers all the space below it. We have area stacked, and we'll look at that in more detail in a minute. Area stacked 100%, and that's this area here. We have columns where they go up like that. The bar is the exact same thing. Bar just goes across left to right, and the bar stacked is the same thing. And the grid, we have the grid here, and we have the calendar. So we have each one of these gadgets, each one of these widgets here. As we drag them over, we can drag over the area here, and you can see that you'll get this area, and so by default it shows you the last month. So this is showing how many incidents, because I have my data source here is incidents, how many incidents were created each day. And you can see it goes up and down. There's a few incidents created on the 7th. There's one on the 7th, and there's two on the 8th. So it just kind of goes up and down. So you can see that area there, and this just fills in the area below it with how many were created. As we go in here, go back up and open this one up again. So you'll notice that we also have a bar chart, like a bar here. And we have a line, and so I'm going to show you some of those things and how those show up here. So when you drag over the area, you'll get something that looks like this, and so then you can go into the info, and you'll notice that there's an incidents, a service request, and a resolve incidents. This will take you directly to the specific series, like a specific report for resolved incidents or for service requests, or a series for incidents. But you can also go to the top level. So if you click on this, then you'll see those same options here. So now when you go to the top level, you'll see all of those other ones, all of those other series. But then you can also see some settings for the overall widget here. So we can come in here to the component, and then we see those different settings there. So the title here, the area, we can put that up there. The output. So we can change the output on this. You'll notice we can set we could set this to, for example, 10, and then everything looks a lot smaller because the y-axis all of a sudden gets a lot taller. So we can change some of the output settings there. In this case, I know I only have 3 incidents, and so we'll set it to a lower number. You can show the total, the average. You can show these numbers below, the minimum and the maximum, and sometimes they don't show up. Sometimes you don't have all of those numbers available to you, so they don't show up on the bottom. You can show the title summary. Showing the title summary shows, it's supposed to show the incidents created between this date, and it's supposed to show it up there. So you have all these different settings here. Oh yeah, the y-axis, number of opened, you can see how we label that there. And also that black line, you'll notice there's a solid black line there. It goes across says 1. So you could always put a marker, like you may have like your goal of incidents created, you know, and so you can come into the top level and you can put in a line. So you can just draw a line there. Get another line saying 2. And we'll make this line red. So then you see that line there. So maybe that's the goal for the total number of incidents you want. And so you can see if you're above or below that number. So that's another thing you can look at. And then you'll notice there's this orange one here, this orange triangle. There's the dark orange triangle, and then there's the bar chart. So the incidents created, that's this orange here. So incidents created, there's 2 created on Sunday, 1 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday. So this dark orange is incidents created series. So you can see that. The service requests, this is how many service requests were created. So you can see that one is overlaid on top of it. And then we have a third one, resolved incidents, how many incidents were resolved. And so that one is actually a bar chart, and I'll show you how you can do that. And so those are the 3 different series there. So the series, when I added a new series for resolved incidents, I just came down here and I added a series. And as I filled that out, as I added that series, I gave it a name, set up the filter, and then the output. So by default, all the other ones were area, but in this case, I just changed it to column. So we could do like a line if we wanted to, so we can just see that change. So then you'll see the line, how that goes on there. So you don't have to show the same types. You can, and this applies for time components, group components, most of these, it's the same way. So you can add different grouping types. You can add different types on the same report. So we have that there. We have those lines on there. And then when we come back to the component, coming back here again, the alert rules. So you can add alert rules, so you can change the colors. It doesn't work very well, or doesn't do much of anything for the area reports. But as we get to like a list, that would be very clear on the lists. So you can change different rows, different colors, or if somebody's a VIP, you could change the background of their incident when it's on a list. You could change that to red if they're a VIP. So you can add different alert rules, and we'll cover those more in detail when we do like the group components. And then you have notes. So you can just add a notes section here. When you add the notes, you'll see the notes here. Just shows the notes. So the area, you'll notice that incident-wise, we go up and down. We have one incident one day, 2 incidents another day. And then on Thursday the 6th, we have 2 incidents, and we have a service request that was opened. So if we do area, then they're just going up and down like that. But if we do area stacked, then instead of putting them in front of each other, it puts them on top of each other. So now you can see that on Thursday the 6th, there's our 2 incidents, and then it stacks on top of it, stacks the 1 service request. So that's area stacked, and that's how that looks. The area stacked 100%, so it just goes across. It's always 100%. So on these days, it was all incidents, but then on this day, then we have 2 incidents and 1 service request. So you can see it stacks them. It always stacks them 100% there. If we do the column or the bar, then we can do it like, it shows up like this. So on all these days, we only have incidents, so we only see the incident color there. But then on Thursday the 6th, we have 2 incidents, and we have 1 service request right next to that. So we can see those stacked next to each other. And if you add 2 or 3 or 4, they'll be stacked next to each other like this. I don't have an example for everything, but the bar stacked 100%, it would be like this. They would all be straight across. You would just have them, you would have it broken down kind of like this, but in a bar. Or if you have the bar stacked, then it would be like this one up here. So this 1 will be stuck on top of this 2. So they have those there. The grid, so that one just kind of shows you kind of in a calendar sense. It just goes across, and shows you how many were created each day in a grid sense. And then the calendar is an actual calendar. So it goes through and it puts all the dates in a calendar format. So if you're showing the month, then it'll show all of the days of the month there. So those are the different time components as you're creating these, as you drag one over. So let's just drag a column over here. So we start over, and so these are all of the incidents that were created last month. So we can come in here and we can always change the filters. And so as we look at this, the output for the entire object doesn't have any filters on it. So we can then drill down into the incidents here. And the date condition, it says created during the last month. So we could change this, and the other ones, they're created during, I just picked a series between the 2nd and the 9th. Oops, that's May 9th. So we can do that. I can click OK. So then it matches all of these other ones. So we can change the date filter there. We can go in here and we can change the date filter. We could also, so this is incidents whose created date time is during this. So we could also change this. So maybe we don't want the created date time. We want to know how many were resolved. So we could change this and we could say the resolved date is between those. I can jump back out. So then this will show us that we only resolved incidents on Saturday and Sunday. So we can always change that. And then we could change it so we're doing every 2 days, just so we could change the look of it. We do that. We can, besides counting, we could also sum. So we could sum up the close duration, or we could average. So we could say the close duration might be nice to average. You know, how long does it take? Change that back to 1, and we'll say go back to the created date time. So the created date is between there, and so we're going to average the closed duration. How long does it take to close them? So now we can get takes on average 909 minutes to close these incidents. And for the incidents that were created on Sunday, the average time to close was 16. So we can change up the way that, you know, we don't have to just count the incidents. We can average them. We can find the min. We can find the max. We can change those different values there. We can filter it so that we only look at, we can create a standard filter here, only look at incidents where the owner team, and I'm not sure because I have a whole bunch of owner teams in my lab, but we can then search for owner team is accounting. I'm sure we're probably not going to come up with anything, but that filters it down. Yeah, so then there's no accounting incidents. So we can change the filter for the incidents, for the series that we're looking at. Alert rules, that's where you can add different values in there. You can just say if it's greater than 3, then you change the text to red, or and again we'll look at this better in the grouping in the next section. So those are some of the things that we can do with those. We can always change the series, so or the data source. So if you wanted to change from incidents to service requests, we could do that. And that is the majority of the information that we can cover there with the time components. And if you do have any questions, please let us know. We can dig into something in more detail. But then the next section we'll look at the group components and how those are all set up. For this next section, we'll look at the group components, and there's several different types of group components. There's pie charts. We have an example of a pie chart here. These are all the incidents created last month, organized by their owner, sorted by their owner. Donut, which looks basically the same, just a hole in the middle. We have columns over here, and bar charts is the same thing. They just go down the side instead of across the bottom. And we have an example of a bubble chart and a grid. And so as you expand these, you can then group the incidents, for example, by active. If we just drag this over, we'll get a pie chart that shows that 30 of the incidents are active and 8 of them are not. Or we can drag over, a bar chart. We can go down the side. We can the exact same data shows it 30 and 8. So we can just drag these different items over here, and once we drag them over, then we can go in and remember this is the top level, and then this is drilling down to the specific component here, the series. So we can go in here and we can filter this down, and by default it's showing last month, and we could show the incidents created by user X or created this week. We can change those filters there. So we can just drag those over and drop the different types of data points onto one of these widgets, and then we can go in and we can make changes to that. So to start off with, we have this this pie chart, and so I just dragged, for this pie chart, I just dragged over the owner. So I just came down here and dragged over owner. And when we do that, then we get this chart, and it shows the different users that are assigned these incidents. And so then we can come in here and we can look at the top level. We can look at the component. And so one thing you'll notice is that we have other. We have 8 here. So some of the things we can do with that, we can come to this top level, and here's the series, the different data points that we have. We can look at the output and we can say, don't show other. So that's like all the rest. So we can show these ones. And the other is anything. Let's go back in there again. So we're showing the top 10. So other is anything that's below that cutoff, that threshold. So the 11th item in order will be cut off there, and everything below that. So we can hide that. The title summary, you'll notice it says incidents owner. So it's showing us what it is, created date during the last month. So we can show that, or maybe we just want to give it a nice, we just want to say this is a pie chart. So then we can uncheck this, and we just show our nice title. So then we can have these nice titles. Or maybe you do want to show this information there, just so you can know exactly what's going on there. So with the output, you can do that. We can also change, like by default, we're showing 10. So we could say we want to see all of them. And you can do that for each one of these. So now you can see, we see a lot more items in there. So we can change that with the output. We can change, well, the value works better with the charts over here, the columns and things. But we can sort it by, let's go in there. So right now we have Terry Butler. He is the owner of 8 incidents, and Abdiel Stone is the owner of 6 incidents. So it's organizing these, it's sorting these by how many they own. So for example, in this one, it makes more sense. And I'll show you why the customer one, we'll look at that in a minute. But right now, the sort order, it's sorting by the value, like 8, 6, 5, So we could do it by the text, which is the owner name. So now it sorts it in alphabetical order. So we can see it sorting that way. So you can change, how these things are sorted. You can give it labels. So the x-axis, we can call this owner. Let me put owner down that level there, and then I can give the y-axis like number of assigned incidents. So we can go in and make changes like that. Do that. We could put a line in there. We looked at that with the time components. We could put lines in there. The alert rules, we'll take a look at that one in another minute. Notes, if you just wanted to put in a specific note, we could say like this filters out incidents by the finance team or something like that. So we know that we're filtering those out. We have a note, and you can see that note there. So you'll notice when I come in here and I edit this one that I have 2 series, but we're only seeing this one set of data. So I'm going to go back to the top level here and output. Let's see. So we're going to sort these just by value, so it makes more sense. And then we'll come back to this general. So we have this owner series, which is what we're looking at. So we have this owner series. How many incidents does Terry Butler own? He owns 8. And then we can come back in here, and I've added a second series. I came in here, and I added a series. And this series, when I added it, I just said I want to group it by customer. So I want to see how many incidents the customer has open. We're going to count, the customer number of incidents by customer. So I went in and added this. I just added a new series, and then I changed this to the customer. It'll be up here, customer. There we go. And then we save that. So there's my second one. And so now we can see down here the key, the owner. So Terry Butler owns 8. The customer, he is the customer, or he has, and then we can see here he has 0 open. But in the case of Erev, he owns 2. He's the owner of 2 incidents. But Erev has 1 open incident right now. And you can see how it puts these side by side. And we can add as many series as we want, and it'll just group it by the user. So we can see, as well that Alan, he has 1 incident that he's assigned. He's the owner of 1 incident, but he also has 1 incident open. So we can add those extra series, and they'll show up in the data there. And if you notice, when I first opened that up, it wasn't showing the customer. And so if I go into the customer series, if I double-click on that, I can go to the output, and I just unchecked visible. So I still had it there. So I have the series, it's just not visible. So we can show that information there. We can hide it. Moving on to the next chart, we have the bubble chart. And to be honest, I don't use this one very often, so I'm not as familiar with it. But you can, in the bubble chart, you can, let's see, so we'll go in there. So I've added 1, I dragged the owner over there, I added 1 series, and I added another customer series. And with the bubble chart, then you can choose. So we have those 2 different ones there. We can choose, which one goes along the x-axis and which one goes along the y-axis. And I don't find the bubble chart too helpful, so I honestly don't know a whole lot about it, but you can see an example of it there, where it just has these same data points and they're on there. And a lot of these are overlapping, so they're in the same place. So there's actually like 5 or 6 of those bubbles that are the same person. So that's a bubble chart. And then the grid, so if we come up here, so the grid is the same thing. If we were to just expand the grid, and I dragged over owner to start with, and that gave me this first column. So let's do that real quick. So we'll drag it over here. So we have owner, so we have this owner column. And so then you can come in here, and you can add another series. So we go to the top level, and I just added another series for customer and for resolved by. I just came in here and added a series, and then changed this to the different fields. And so this way we can have 3 different series, and each one of those series, so Erev, he's the owner of 2 incidents. I can kind of see that up here, he's in there somewhere. I don't know, he's in, oh, there we go. So Erev owns 2 incidents, and he's a customer of 1. He has 1 open incident, and we can see those columns and the resolved by. So my resolved by is a blank user, so admin has resolved 3. So we can see, multiple data points in columns there. So we have the grid here, and then you'll notice that this row here has a red highlighted text. So something we can do with these grid items, if we come in here and look at the top level, then we can go to the alert rules. Is it on this one, or is it? Let's see. It's on the owner. There we go. So we go to. So we could do it on the top level, and it would apply the alert rules to everything. But in this case, it's just on the owner, so it's just that 1 row. And this alert rule here, so we can say if it's greater than 5, then we're going to highlight it and do that. So we could add another one here. We could say if the owner is less than 2. So if they own less than 2 incidents, then we can say the text color is black, and we'll just change the background color to a light green. So if they have less than 2 incidents, then we'll change it to green. We can see that. So this blank user owns none, and Aaron owns none, Abby. So we can see how we can highlight those different numbers. We can show more emphasis on those. So you can go and you can do that with alert rules. And alert rules, while they are available for columns and pie charts, they don't really show up. So you can't, while the setting is there, you can't really do anything with the alert rules. But these grids, they're a lot more effective in highlighting information there on the grids. So these are all the different types of charts that you have that you can use for the grouping. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the next section for the tree. The next type that we'll look at is the tree components. So as you expand this, you just have the grid, and then we can choose all the different things that we want to report on. So in this top section here, I just dragged over owner, and that one's pretty straightforward. It just gives us a list, the same thing that we've been seeing before, just gives us a list of the owners. So we see that there. We can go into the top level here. We can change, so right now it's sorting by the text, by the values that come back. We could sort by the value. That's the value over there. And then we can sort by that. We can go in and do that. And when you add this in, the tree series, and when you look at it initially, it looks a lot like the group, where you can just have a grid. And when you come in here and look at this, you'll see that the screen here looks a little bit different. We have these fields, and it has the owner, so it's going to count the owner here. You can come in here, and so here's a little bit more advanced example. So this is the same thing. We can see the Arif. He has 2 incidents, and one of them is not active, and the customer is Cindy, and one of them is active, and the customer is Marin. And so we can really drill down like a tree. So we can come in here, and we can look at the component. When we look at this one, the top level is the owner, and so that's the first thing you'll see. So the owner has two incidents as the owner, and then the next thing we'll group by is active. So they have 1 active, and then 1 non-active, and then for each one of those active or non-active, then how many of those, for each individual customer. So we can really start to drill down and see a lot more detailed data. So we can see that here, so we can see the Arif has 2 incidents. Actually, let's look for Terry. Let's scroll down here. Most of his are probably closed, but okay. So Terry, so he's got 8 incidents that he's the owner of, and 5 of them are not active. So 5 of them are resolved or closed, and all 5 of those are for Wendy. So she's the customer for all 5 of those. And then he has 3 that are active that he's still working on, and one of those is for this Danimals, and one is for Dana Riddle, and one is for Quinn. So if we want to see how many does Terry have, he has 8. How many are active? We can just minimize these like this. How many are active? 3, and 5 non-active. But then of those that are active, who are the customers? So we can really drill down and look at that data like that by coming in here and adding these different levels. And so we can add a field, and then we can add these, move these over. Attachment probably wouldn't make much sense, but so you can add, and then once you do that, you can then order them. So we could start off with, we could put active first. If we do that, then we see that there's 9 that are not active. So it shows us all those 9 that are not active, and then 29 that are active. And it just gives it a different top level. Of those 29 that are active, one is by Erev and one is by Aaron, and so these are the owners. That's the second level. So you can break down the data and show it as a tree. So we can do that. And then the other option that you have, which may not be as useful, but just so you know that it's there, when you're on this top level, so we were looking at the series, and we were just adding new rows, new fields into the series there, into the same one series, and then it gave it a hierarchy. But you can also just add a new series. And so I did that. I added a new series there. And when you add the new series, it just adds another column. So the first series is owner. And so Erev has 2. And there's no tree. It's just different series. So as we come down, we see the active. And active has 10. And it shows those. And the status there is it's in the status column. But then there's nothing in the owner because that's not an owner. So we can add those in there like that. And then with these as well, you can see that we've highlighted some of the rows of text. And that's the same as we did with the group, where you can create the alert rules. And in this case, it's on the top level, so it'll apply to everything. And so we just created a new rule. And we just said if the number is greater than 2, then we'll just set this text and these colors here. And so any of these that are greater than 2, then it will highlight those rows. You could drill down, so you could do this on a lower level. So we could say, so we're on just this one here. Well, actually we won't be able to do it on this one because it's all in the same series. So that because there's one series, it would be the same thing as adding it at the top level because we can't just do it on the owner or just on the customer. So here we could. So we could come into the status, and we could say if the status, add a rule, if it's greater than 2, let's change the background to blue. Blue, there we go. Okay, so this one applies to the status row, but it doesn't apply to the owner row because we did it on the lower level. But in this case, because we applied it to the component, then it applies it to everything, which is the whole tree. The next component that we'll look at here is the pivot components. And the pivot components, you can look at the data on 2 different, like on rows and on columns. So, and there's 3 different types. There's group pivots, and with a group pivot, you can have data on one side and then data on the other side. So we have the owners here, and then here we have status. So you can see that Terry has 3 incidents that are resolved and 5 that are closed, and same look up here. So we have a group pivot where we can pivot the data on 2 different data points. We have time group pivots. So on this one, we have a time frame. So we can go down and we can show the different days or hours or months. We can group the data together. And then we can pivot with data on this side. So we can have data and then time. And then we have the time pivots where we have time and time. So this one is the resolve date going down this way, and then the creation date going down this way. So we can sort the data in several different, or we can show the data in several different ways with time and data, or with just data. And so as we look at these, you'll notice that we have these different data points, and it may look similar to, for example, the trees. The trees are a similar way of displaying the data where you can look at the owner, and then you can see that the owner has how many of those incidents that they have that are active, and then of those that are not active, what are all the different customers. So we can drill down in the tree, top level down to the bottom level. And so these ones look kind of similar in that sense. Let's see, one of these, this one here, yeah. So we have, so on the time group pivot, we have the owner, and then we have the status, and then we have the source. So you can kind of drill down like we have here. So you can do something similar to these. but you have the ability to filter it down or to show it by dates, which you don't have with the tree components. And you can also display it in bar charts. So look at these areas, columns, all these different types. Whereas with the tree, it's just like a grid like that. And then another thing to point out as we go back to the groups, with these ones as we're looking at the groups and these things, you'll notice that this grid, we can see that, let's see, FRS Wendy, we can see that she has, she's a customer in one incident, and she's resolved 9 incidents. So we can see multiple sets of data like this, but this is all based on the one user. This is, what Wendy is. She is the owner. How many times? None. She is the customer. How many times? 1. She has resolved how many incidents? 9. And these are all for Wendy. Whereas these ones, we can see that Terry has this data, and we can drill down into these further. And we'll look at some of these examples here. Like, yeah, so we can look at these data points further. So with these ones here, the group pivots, as you expand this here, we have all these different charts that we can drag over, just the same as all the other ones. So we can expand this, and just a simple one maybe to look at, this status owner that I have here. So we'll drag over status. We'll say we want to see these incidents grouped by status. And then, so we'll have the status on the one side, and what's on the other side? What's the columns? And so in this case, we'll say customer. Scroll down a little bit. There we go, customer. So we have the status is here, and then we have the customer here. So we can do something like this, and it's real simple. Gives you a nice grid layout there. And we can do the same thing if we're doing a grid here, but if we dragged over columns, then it would look like this, the group. And when you come in here and edit these, so the row, you'll notice that, let's see, on this one, there's multiple data points. It's the owner, the status, the source. So when we come in here and we edit these, we can go and we can add more rows. We have the status, and we have the customer across the top, but we could also add in, we can add a group pivot. On this case, let's say the owner. And then just to have one more in there, let's say source. A lot of related items. There we go, source. So we add in multiple rows, and then as you'll see, we can see that the status is active, so we can really start drilling down into these. And then the owner is Aaron, and so the customer is Arif, and the source was phone. And Gary Richards, so of the active status, the owner, Gary Richards, he has 1. See if we can find one that has more than 1 in here. Do we have one? Oh, there we go. Okay. So the resolve status. So Terry Butler. So he has phone. If we can scroll, my mouse scroll over. Now there are, see, phone and self-service. So there are some numbers over there. Maybe we just can't see them. But so he has 2 entries for phone and self-service. Or maybe the customer's blank. Maybe that's why it's not showing up. Have any of the other ones? Okay, so Terry, this one's more self-explanatory. So the closed status, Terry, he has 1 that came from the phone, or actually he's got 4 for Wendy that came from the phone, and 1 that was self-service from Wendy. So we can go in and we can add those different like drill down points, so we can group them further and further. It's similar to the tree, but we can show those like this. So, and then we can, another thing to point out, so this is a grid. We can actually come over to the output here, and we'll see that we have that columns there. So we can change this from a grid to a column, and it'll be similar to that one there. So you can change the way that these look. And let's see, so other items here. Filters, of course, you can go in there and you can change the filter so that you're looking at different time frames. The alert rules, they work with the grids, so you could set up an alert rule if you have more than 5 incidents from a customer or something, then you can change it to red. So you can set up alert rules there, similar to the other alert rules and the other types of components that we've looked at. So the group pivots, that's what we're looking at here. The group pivots, we look at a data point like active, or the status, and then we look at another data point, the owner. So we have those there. So we can look at how many active incidents does Abby Reyes have, and how many does Abby Mellon have. So we can see those there. But there's also time group, so that includes one data point and time. So we have the time group here, and so here's an example of those where it looks very similar to the other ones, but instead of having a data point like the customer, the owner, or something like that, we have time. So we can show that there, and let's drag over another one of these here. So we'll do a grid, and we'll do this by owner. Owner. There we go. So drag that over. So we start with something like this, and we look at this and we say, that's a lot of data points for the month. Maybe we want to see for the year. So this shows that Terry, he had an incident that was created on Sunday the 16th. There were 2 created on Monday the 17th. So we can see that he has several different incidents that he's been assigned that have been created throughout the month. And as we look at this, maybe we want to see the data, but we want to see it by year or by month. So we can group, instead of grouping these together by day, we can group these together by month. And so to do that, we can come in here, and then we'll need to edit the column, and we'll also need to change this here for the filter. But we'll come into this column, and we'll edit this, and we'll say we want to group this by month, and then we'll put here, we want to show this by the month. We'll just display it as the month. And the created date, we want to change that. And we'll say during last year, let's see, last year, let's just say this year. We'll just make it easy. So it's going from, okay, so we'll clear that because the dates down there weren't looking correct. So we'll say during the last year, to December, there we go. We can say that. There we go. And then for the filter, we'll also need to update that. So clear that. And we'll say during the last year, January to December. Okay. So then let's go ahead and see how that looks. So then we can see that the closed status there. So there's 7 that are closed, and it looks like all of them are closed for last year, that were created last year, because there's no other statuses. So that's great. We don't have any old incidents from last year. So we look at this, and 46 created, in August, 45 in September, and so we can change how we group these together as we're how we can show this data here. And so this is the time group. So we can so we have time on one side, and then we have the values like the statuses on the other side, and then the third one is time pivots, and so that one just has time on both sides. So here we just have like the open date or the created date and the close date. So looking at this, there was an incident that was created on Sunday, April 2nd, and it was closed on Saturday, April 8th. So we can see these graphs here. So to add these, it's very similar. So we can just say the created date, and then we have all of these different ones here, created date, close date. So we can drag that over. So there's our same value there. Or maybe we want to see the created date and the resolve date. Make this a little bit wider. Come on, there we go. Resolve date. So we can drag that over. I can see a little bit differently. So there's an incident created on the first and resolved on the first. So these time pivots are the same. And like these ones, we can go in and we can edit the pivot. We could change this by month. And we'll just show the month. And then we'll clear that. And we'll just say during the last year. Does that go? Yep. Okay. But then we also need to change the filter. So I'll create a standard filter. Year, very good. So we show that, and actually it probably would be good if we were to group by month on that one as well. So let's go in, we'll edit this one, and we'll do the same thing. Do it by month, and we'll do it for last year. And then just to show something different, so that's January and the year, so we'll just show just the month. So now we can see that in January, and this is a new install, so in April, there were 7 incidents created and resolved. Yeah, so we can see all those numbers there. So created date, is that right? Oh, yeah, that's not going to work very well. The created date, we need to, that's why all those numbers are lining up. So we can edit that, and instead of the created date, I could say the resolve date. Okay, now we're seeing some different numbers. There we go. So in April, there were 4 that were created, and they were resolved in April. April, there were 4 that were created, but then there were 3 created in April that were resolved in May. So we can pivot those dates there. We can show those different values. So kind of like the kayak or the Google Flights or something, when you're looking for a trip, you can show the dates and then pivot them so you can see the different values and in different time frames. And all right, so that is the pivot section. And then next we'll move on to the scorecard and the list. The next component that we'll look at is the scoreboard component. And the scoreboard component has 2 different ways of displaying the data. We have the scoreboard, like we have these 2 items here, and then we have the grid. And with the scorecard components, it's just a quick, easy way to show you a number. So the number of computers that aren't patched, the number of incidents created. Just a quick number, something you can put on a tile when you don't want to put too many data points on there. And with the scoreboard, we can just drag that over. We can just start off with a count, and so we can count how many incidents. And when you add these in, if you add more than 1 series on the scoreboard, it will only show you the most recent series. It won't show you, like this one over here, it won't show you all the different series that you have added. But if you do go to the grid, then you can add multiple series and you can show those numbers in there. And with the scoreboard, when we go in and look at some of the settings for this, we can go to the top level and look at the output. And so we can show the title summary and the alert rules. So we can set these alert rules where we can, and again, this is on the top level. So when we add an alert rule here, it will apply to everything. But in this case, there's just 1 series. But if we added it to this grid, then we would be able to apply this rule to every item in that grid. So we're on the top level here. But then if we come down into the series, then we can look at the alert rule here, and we can see there's this one, or if it's greater than 50. So we can change the color or the background of that. If you just want to always show, a solid color that, you just don't want it to be white, you could just set an alert rule that is always true. The the number of incidents is greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0. So you can add those items in there. And of course, there's the filters. We'll go over these in more depth in a later video. And the output, if you want to show it as like a decimal number, you could round those. And so we have that there. And see the output here. Yeah, so we can show the title summary there. And we can switch them also. We can switch it between a grid and the scoreboard. So we have those there. And so the grid is the same thing. So instead of dragging this scoreboard over for the grid, let's do an average. And so we can drag over the average response time. Do we have that in here? Let's see. Resolution time. So we can drag these up. Oops, didn't mean to drill into that. So we'll drag that over, and the average is 12, what is that, 12 minutes? So we can drag those over, and we can add those on. Oh, in hours. Oh, there we go. So hours. And you can always drag that over and make it wider so you can see it. But there's the average response time in hours, and this is my lab, so apparently I'm doing a really bad job at responding to incidents there. You can go in to the alert rules, and you can add those, of course. We can do that there. We can, like, so for example, in this case, we have an alert rule just on the average time to close. It's just on this one here, so it doesn't apply the red, yellow, green to all the other ones. It just applies it to the one series, to this one series here. And so that is the scorecards in a nutshell. They just give you a nice way of showing you a number, so you can show that number on a dashboard. And we'll move on to the rest of these and show you how you can use the list components and the text components and the image components. The next component that we'll look at is the list components, and those are basically just a query. We can drag those over, and we can drop them on there, and then it will just show a basic query, a basic list. And with this list, we can always go in and we can filter it. So we can filter it to show exactly what we want. These are created last month, but maybe we could add a condition to say the status. Scroll down here and say the status is still open equals, and then we can click on this search button here. We could say active or logged, active, logged. Yeah, those are our active, not closed statuses. So we can say, okay, so they were created last month and they're still open. So then we can see that list get smaller. We can filter it down. And with this list, we can also go in, and actually I'm going to reopen this dashboard. So with this list, we can also go in and we can specify which columns we want. We can come here to the column section, and we can remove a column, or we can just edit the columns. And we can come over here and we can say we also want the description. Oh, skipped right over it. So we can drag that over and we can add the description. And we can move it down the list. We can say we want the description to be our last column. So we can do something like that. So we can see our description there. And we can add those columns. And when you add the columns, it doesn't apply on most any of these columns here, but there can be columns that are numbers. You can come over here and you can format them. So you could put it as an integer, so it's just a whole number, 1, 2, 3, 4, or you could give it a decimal with 1 decimal spot, or decimal with 4 decimal spots. Currency, so we could format it as like a dollar currency. Number, so 4 places, the numbers is there. So we can go in and we can format those. We can change, so we can get the exact value. On the General tab also, we can give it a title to show there. We can change the data source. There's a checkbox for distinct records only, And this won't be too common, but there may be some times when maybe you're showing a column that has more than one value, like a one-to-many value. So for example, a computer and its IP address, maybe it has more than one network card. And so if you show the IP address in one of the columns, then you would have 2 or 3 rows. You'd have computer 1 with IP address A, and then you'd have computer 1 again with IP address 2, and computer 1 a third time with IP address 3, and it would be listed 3 times, even though there's only one computer. And so you could check this distinct records only, and it would just show one row. It would show the first value that came back, the first IP address, and it would show just the distinct, unique records, just the computer, one computer row. And the title summary, so this just, so you can see right now it says list with highlights. If we check that, then it says like last month, created during the last month, puts that stuff on there. So we can put that in there. The column auto sizing, I haven't had much success with that. The documentation says that with column auto sizing, you can change the column size here, and then it won't automatically resize them. But that doesn't work for me, so maybe that'll be working in a better version. And then there's the page size. So you can see on this one up above, we can see how we have these page size numbers here. So there's 8 records. So we can show like 3 records, we can show 5 records, we can show 200 records. And so this is your, like, how many records per page. And you'll notice down here, by default, it's not showing that. So if you click on this gear, then you can click on this button here and turn on paging. And so you have 20 per page, 50 per page, or 100 per page. And then when you click on this info button, you can just change how many items per page you have there. So you can set that there. The columns, you can come in, you can remove them, add new columns. And these columns, whenever you drag over a new list, so if we just drag this over and we get these columns here, just so you're aware, the default columns, if you were to come over here, okay, and we look at our incidents here in the data model. So the default list fields, it's this item here. So if you are constantly dragging this over and you're thinking, I do this, 2 or 3 times a week, and I don't want to. I want different columns to show up to start with. You can always change them, but I want different columns to start with. You can go into the data model editor, and you can change. You can go up to the view there, and you can change the default list fields. So there's the columns that you can change there, and then the filter, of course. You can always change the filter, and the highlight rules. So let's see. I didn't have a highlight rule on the default dashboard. There we go. So the highlight rules. So we can add the rules in here and make, what we say, if VIP is no, we'll just do something with a VIP. VIP equals no. Then let's say the text color is going to be black and the background color will be green. So we can add a rule like that. And so these ones, the VIP is no. So, and because we applied that, or let's see, the highlight rule. Yeah, so we did that on the entire row. And we could also go in and we could say, let's see. Well, yeah, actually you can't change those once you've added it. So if we had just changed this to say the VIP column, so VIP to, so do the same thing again, no, add that in. The text is black and the background will be a different color of green. So that's just on the, so when we added that one, it's just to the VIP. We apply it just to the VIP. So then, oh, it's got another rule above it. But But that's how we applied. It didn't apply there because we had another rule above it that applied to the whole row. But we could go in and we could, that's what the priority is there. We just applied it to the priority. There we go. So we just applied it to the priority rule there, the column. So we can go in, we can add those there, and you can always add notes. So as you add notes there, then it just shows a little note icon, so that maybe you have some additional notes that you can see there. So that's it for the lists. They're pretty simple and straightforward. You can use them to show kind of like a list of all incidents and their data. So you could look through like a monthly report of all the incidents created or something. And after the list components, then we have the text components. And the text component, that's basically, it just puts in text. So maybe you want to give your dashboard a label. You just want to put a label up in the corner or something saying this is the incident dashboard. So you can drag over the text component and drop it on there, and then you'll get you'll be able to put in text. You can just type in text to fill in that box. So there's not too much to it, but when we come in here, the output, there's a checkbox here to show the series header, and we'll look at that in just a second. So the series, we have the series name here. I called it series name, but we have the series, just like all the other ones. We just, like, what is the data set? So when you come in here, the output here, so we have the header text, and then we have the body text. So here, when you output and we say show the series header, then that would be, we'd be coming in here, and we'd be showing the header text here. So this, by default, whenever we drag over one of these text components, we'll put the data that we want to go in to the body text, and that'll show it there. And then if you, on the main screen, if you check that checkbox to show the header, so then we have that there, and we can go straight to it. So there's the header there. And you can change the text, the text color. You can make it a URL, so you can make it a clickable URL there. So you can, it basically just gives you an ability to put a label in one of these squares. So you can give your dashboard a name and put it on the dashboard. And the same thing with the image. So that's the text component. The image component, we can drag that over, and we get we can put a picture on there. And so there's not a lot of settings to this one. You can either point to a URL, so an image out on the internet or hosted on a server somewhere, or you can just browse for the file. You can click in here and select a file and select the wrench. So we have that wrench there. And then you just have a few options here. You can scale it, so you can stretch it, and you can letterbox it, so it just so it cuts off the sides, or you can stretch it, so you can just stretch it to the edges. You can repeat, so if it's too small, then you can just repeat it on there. And there's just a few options there, aligning it vertically, aligning it horizontally, so you can just change how your picture is going to show up. And then you could just, you could put a picture, something representing your dashboard. So if this is like a priority 1 dashboard or a VIP dashboard, you could put a siren or something on there, an exclamation mark or something. So you can just add pictures to your dashboard. So that's the image components, the text components, and the lists. And so now that we've gone through all of these, then our next video that we're going to work on is we'll go into the filters. We'll give you a lot more information on how you can filter each one of these, do advanced filters, and do all sorts of filtering options to show what you want.